You like jazz?
Imperial Triumphant Review. Hello everybody, my name is Xander, and today we are taking a look at the brand new Imperial Triumphant album, Alphaville. Black metal middleweight powerhouses Imperial Triumphant are back. And we hadn't really heard from them since their last album, Vile Luxury, that released back in 2018. It was really their seminal album that blew them up to the popularity they have today. And while the material from before that was amazing and definitely shouldn't be understated, the sheer quality of that album was just off the charts. It's no-nonsense approach to black metal with just the trio of the guitars, the bass and the drums, the real meat and potatoes of the sound, all coming together to make these beautiful, lively, but also disgusting and dissonant melodies over these long and ever-changing and forming songs that showed not only an astounding level of technical proficiency on their instruments, but a profound creativity of coming up with, okay, maybe not melodies, but sounds. But not just noise, things that you can really put your ears on and focus on. With a lot of extreme metal, I find that you just kind of get lost in it, and it ends up just being a bunch of sounds, but with Imperial Triumph, that's never an issue. There's always a specific line or mood or theme that we're following with our ears. It helps you guide through the chaotic, clanging mess of noises. Now, given that Imperial Triumphant are based in New York, a lot of their albums are themed around that city. The last one, as well as this one, are actually themed around the city of New York with a bunch of sounds that really give you the mood. And the mood and ambience level are off the charts here. The album starts out with this slow drone that kind of builds up with sirens and clangy sounds over the top of it, before we hear like the distant sounds of the guitars and the drums slowly start to build up before they just explode into the album. But that isn't all that gives the theme. There's actually a lot of very explicit references to jazz in this album. And I don't just mean that in a pretentious way where I compare anything I like to jazz. I mean, along with the dissonance and the general philosophy of the genre, there are like piano sounds, there's a trombone solo that comes after a very explicitly jazzy, kind of Miles Davis-y duet between a piano and a trombone. This is along with other things, such as the track Atomic Age having a barbershop quartet-style, just a cappella opening. There's also this choral section in the intro track with this very interesting descending chromatic sound that repeats over and over as the melody. There are also some background bustling cars and screaming that really present the idea that you're not alone and you're in this grand city with a bunch of people. This is following their general pattern of being extremely sonically diverse with instrumentation from all types of music. There's some very Matrix-y Nine Inch Nails style of stacked industrial percussion scattered all around this album, as well as a break on one of the songs that leads to a kind of African-style layered percussion section. And if it sounds like I'm just bringing up a bunch of totally random sounds, it's kind of because I am. Like I said, this album is very, very sonically diverse, and none of it feels gimmicky whatsoever. There are a few sections where this isn't just an alternate sound or a thing to add to the mood, but a very intelligently considered part of the music where it feels like the song would just be lost without these extra sections. And I'm not just talking breaks in the music, I'm talking like the bedrock of the counterpoint. The very explicit jazz references an insane trombone solo that happens over the top of the wailing dissonant guitars on Transmission to Mercury is one of my favourite moments on the whole album. And the way that on City Swine you have the piano doing this like insane high chord work over the really low and contrasting djenty guitars and bass that we're used to provides such a new level of interesting sound and melody and dissonance. It drives the song forwards and complements the rest of the track beautifully. But funnily enough, there are no actual orchestral sections on this album, and I found that pretty interesting. It's proof to me that they weren't just like, oh, let's get a new sound, quick, violin players. It's proof of how well put together the whole thing was. They didn't do what most metal bands do, which is just, hey, string players, play strings. They realised that the classical sound wasn't going to fit and then chose not to include it. So at this point I would like to point out that I've been talking for this many minutes, and I've yet to actually talk about, you know, the drums, bass, guitar and vocals, the core of metal, and... oh yeah, these guys wear masks. Should I mention that at the start? The fact I have this much left to talk about is very telling of just how insane this band is. So yeah, the actual metal backing, the meat and potatoes of this album, are utterly fantastic. Their drummer has a somewhat classical style of percussion where it doesn't feel like he's constantly keeping the beat, and he's definitely not just mindlessly thrashing the entire time. He serves to elevate the music with his beats, and it's very impressive. Not to mention the extremely stylized guitar and bass, which are just insane. Not to mention the incredibly stylized guitar and bass that are insane. Like I said near the beginning, I wouldn't describe their approach as melodic, but it always gives you specific repeating sounds that your ears can latch onto. They're not recreatable with voice, and I can't play them, so you're just gonna have to listen to get a real picture of what they're like. But as dissonant, as distorted, as out of key as they are, they always sound satisfying to the ear as they play over and over again, thrashing against your ears. I've famously never really been a fan of growling in metal. I'm much more of a screaming fan myself. But of recent I have found a few exceptions, and Imperial Triumphant are on the more pleasant to the ear side of this. The lyrics are, in my opinion, nothing special. They serve to reinforce the themes of the album, which are already amazing due to the instrumentals alone, but the lyrics itself don't exactly do anything to elevate and bring these to a brand new level. It's just like, get back in line, we don't need you, you're oppressed, nothing special. Not that it needs to be, the vocals kind of take a backseat to the instrumental, what this album is really about. This album could totally have just gone instrumental and just been like a really cool soundscape. But vocals can really elevate creepy and distorted soundscapes, and so it is still a shame that they weren't amazing. And while I'm talking about flaws, I'll mention that this album can get just a little bit repetitive with the rhythms at times. The amazing intro I described at the start is undercut slightly. by the fact that the guitar riff isn't, like, particularly impressive. The amazing intro I described at the start is undercut slightly by the fact that the guitar riff gets pretty boring after you've listened to it a couple times, and the doom metal-y slugging duh, 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 duh of Alphaville is kind of grating on the ears. But this is actually made up for pretty well by the pacing of the album. The songs are pretty long with multiple different movements, each bringing up new sonic ideas. It's not just the individual moments that are cool, but the way that they all string together to make these big, grand, long songs and eventually the whole album that really impresses me. So despite my minor complaints, all these amazing, interesting sounds, the combinations of sounds, the meat and potatoes of the guitars, and the way that it's all strung together to make a beautifully satisfying album is why I am giving this new Imperial Triumphant album an 8+ out of 10. And even if you're not, I still think you owe it to yourself to at least give it a shot, see if it's your thing. What these guys are doing is seriously unique, and I think a lot more people, especially after this album and their last album, are going to wake up and start listening to it. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that album. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, it helps me out an enormous amount, and if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. I don't really tend to plug specific socials very often, so my Discord, Twitter, and Instagram is where you'll find me the most. Links to that, as always, will be in the description, and I'm also going to be posting a little bit more on my second channel. I'm going to be just doing very basic commentary video, industry coverage, my thought on recent events, politics, small music reviews, anything that I can just think of and put out a quick video with. But with that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.